I don't want to hear anybody saying, no, the Switch 2 isn't a scam by definition. It's not literally a scam. I know it's not literally a scam. I don't want anybody to be in the comments being like, how can you say that the Switch 2 is a scam? You got what you paid for. I know I got what I paid for. I know that I paid for a Switch 2 and I got a Switch 2. Shut up. That's not what I'm talking about here. I bought the Switch 2 in July, I think. It was like a month after it came out in June, sometime around then. The main reason that I bought it was for Donkey Kong. I had vowed that I wouldn't buy it, and then I saw so much stuff about Donkey Kong, and I was like, you know what? I gotta play the new Donkey Kong game. It's made by the people that made Mario Galaxy and all those games, and Mario Odyssey. I gotta play the new Mario Odyssey game. So I bought the Switch 2, I played Donkey Kong, and I was like, wow, that was a great game. But there were other reasons that I bought a Switch 2, as well as not just for Donkey Kong. I didn't spend $450 thinking I'm just gonna play Donkey Kong. I had other expectations with the Switch 2 that weren't met, and that's why I'm calling it a scam, because a little while ago I made a video about this guy, Corby, and he's still making videos, and you should go watch them all because it's fun. He makes fun videos. That video that I made might have seemed like it was a dig into him, and it kind of was, mainly because he's defending Nintendo, and Nintendo's an evil corporation, and I don't really think he knows why he's saying the things he's saying, and that kind of scares me, but his videos are great, so check them out, please. It's been 7 or 8 months since the Nintendo Switch 2 came out, and there's been several games that have come out, and some people will really go to bat for Nintendo and say that their lineup is fantastic, but I have seen this all before, and I very much disagree with a lot of things, for a lot of reasons. Reason number one I disagree: remember when the Wii U came out and they said, hey look guys, we can finally play PS3 games at worse frame rates and resolutions and graphical fidelity levels? I think Arkham City runs at like 24 frames a second on the Wii U, and that's not very good for like a 3-year-old game. How old was Arkham City? I don't know. Same with like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. Those games got on there, and what was really funny is because then the next year they were like, alright guys, time for PlayStation 4 and Xbox. Don't worry about that one actually. It's just time for PlayStation 4 really, if we're being honest. And Nintendo still had the Wii U, and they were like, wait a second, this was our big leap into graphics, and we can't play the new games because, wait, what's going on here? And then they made the Switch, and that was an interesting situation because it had kind of the same power as a Wii U, so no one was really expecting any new games to be on there, and really you shouldn't have expected new games to be on the Wii U, but that's what they were kind of trying to do with it. But the Switch was like its own little thing. The Switch was like its perfect little balance between Nintendo and normal stuff that people can make games for, and there were some miracle ports that got onto the Switch. Now with the Switch 2 though, they're doing that thing again where they're saying, you guys, we've got graphical power in Nintendo's hands again. We can get third-party games currently onto the Switch 2. That's what they told us. And now you look at their lineup of games, and all of those games are once again from previous console generations, running at worse frame rates and resolutions and graphical fidelity levels. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. I felt this way for a really long time, but I really needed to make this video because yesterday I played the Pragmata demo on Switch 2, and just for kicks and giggles, I also downloaded it on my Steam Deck OLED just to see like really what the difference was going to be. I had heard that people said Pragmata runs pretty decently on the Switch 2, and then I played it and I was like, this looks terrible, and it doesn't run very well. This isn't what I want out of a gaming experience. And then on Steam Deck, I was actually like, oh, it is actually a similar frame rate and experience and stuff. But also, then I went into the Steam settings, and I went into the game settings and the graphics settings, and changed everything, and I lowered certain things. I turned on upscaling and frame generation, and I got the game running at 70 frames per second. And I was like, wow! If only we could do the same thing on Nintendo Switch 2, or at least have the option to do that or something like that. Mainly, I'm just kind of complaining. Like, that's a game-specific situation where I'm complaining that Pragmata doesn't run very well. So that's... I don't know if that's unfair or not to make that kind of criticism or argument here. It just sucks because, once again, Nintendo has said, we're going to get third-party games onto this thing. We're going to get modern games running on a Nintendo console. And they've set themselves up for failure by making a tiny little handheld that cannot use hardly any of its own processing power. Another reason, though, that I feel like the Switch 2 is a scam is because I bought it thinking that they were going to update old Switch games to run better on the Switch 2, and they have done that for approximately 2 games. Half of my Switch library runs at 30 FPS, give or take. Like, fetching Wolfenstein and Doom, Bioshock. I thought at least Bioshock would be able to run better than 30 FPS at terrible resolution. Bioshock looks so bad on the Switch 1. And I get that these are miracle ports, that like the fact that they get running on the Switch is insane either way. And I'm grateful that they are on the Switch. But then for the Switch 2, I'm like, man, I'd love to go and revisit these games that I played once and never played again because they run at 30 FPS. And playing a game at 30 FPS, a shooter at 30 FPS to where you can't aim, it makes it so hard to aim. And then with these tiny little thumbsticks too, these tiny little thumbsticks make it so hard to aim. And then gyro works really well, but in 30 FPS it's also really jarring and difficult to use. You can't play a game like that. It's like, they're gonna update these games that I have and I'm gonna be able to go back and play them, you know, portably or in handheld mode. That's gonna be so much fun. And they haven't done that with any of the games that I own, except for Fortnite and Apex Legends. Thank goodness we got the cash cow that is Fortnite to run on Switch 2. And it's not even 60 FPS locked, man. It's not even, people are gonna tell you it's 60 FPS. It dips so frequently, it's insane. It's Fortnite. So those are the main reasons. Kind of reviewing them all, like, we don't have the third-party output. We didn't get the updates that I wanted. It's been 8 months. There's more reasons, actually. Where is their first-party output, dude? What is this first-party lineup? Let's get this out of the way. Donkey Kong Bonanza is one of the greatest games ever made. I haven't finished it. I don't finish a lot of games, but like it doesn't take a genius to play Donkey Kong and then say, this is the great game of all time. What a great game that is. Mario Kart World is a thumbs down for me. I've played a lot of Mario Kart, and anybody that knows anything about Mario Kart can tell you, the farther you stray away from Double Dash and the foundation that Double Dash left, which is tight controls, good maps, balanced items, but still like a huge variety of different chaotic options, that's Double Dash's foundation. And Mario Kart World strays too far from that. The controls feel floaty, it doesn't feel tight. I love the innovations that they've tried to put in there, but also playing online sucks because then you're just like driving to a course to do 1 lap, to drive to another course to do 1 lap on the course. It sucks. It's really lame. And then of course, like, Welcome Tour is an evil game. Dragon Drive, what the fetch? Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment makes me so upset because I love Zelda so much. It's my favorite series of any of the series. And even with Zelda, they're straying so far away from what I want out of a Zelda game and out of the Zelda universe. And I've wanted this for so long, for them to like expand on Zelda and do more things with the Zelda games, do different genres and tell different stories and show different ways of telling different stories. And now we get the goat people that were my least favorite part of Tears of the Kingdom. Kirby Air Riders is Masahiro Sakurai, and that's a given. That's going to be the greatest game ever made. But Mario Tennis Fever, I don't have any trust in. Poketopia, no trust in. Duskbloods, we still don't have like any information about Duskbloods. Split Fiction is a game that I opened in a tab for some reason. Don't worry about that. It's really cool that we got like Cyberpunk 2077 running on a Switch 2. That's dope. Apparently runs at like 40 FPS, which I think is pretty acceptable for an RPG like that. That's fantastic. Street Fighter 6 is cool. I don't know why they bothered with Star Wars Outlaws. Why? Why was that a priority to where they were like, we gotta get Star Wars Outlaws on here. We gotta get out of all the games. We still can't play Call of Duty on a Nintendo console. That's what, like, Call of Duty was like, hey, we want to get, we want to put Call of Duty on the Switch, on Nintendo and stuff, and they still haven't done that. The Switch 2 could totally run Call of Duty. The PS4 can still run Black Ops 7 at 60 FPS. The Switch 2 could absolutely run Black Ops 7. No Call of Duty for you. Then again, Call of Duty's like, I don't want to play Call of Duty, let's just put it that way. I'm not saying that I want to play Call of Duty, but it should be on there. The biggest thing is Elden Ring. Like, why isn't Elden Ring on here yet? Apparently, it had so many performance issues. What the fetch is up with that? Why is Elden Ring taking so long to get onto the Switch 2? It's been months. The other issue that I have... Oh, also Metroid Prime 4. Fetching, this game is an abomination. This game is an atrocity. It's an affront to God. I've never finished a Metroid game, but I love Metroid, and I've played a lot of different Metroid games, okay? And I get into them. I've, from what I've seen here, from everything that I've seen about Metroid Prime 4, it is, again, such a departure from everything that makes Metroid great, and it feels like Nintendo are trying to do something completely different. They're adding, like, voice acting and cutscenes and all this stuff, and they really just want it to be something that's not Metroid. It doesn't feel or look like Metroid at all, and it makes me so sad because Retro Studios are some talented game directors that have been forced to make this crappy game. Also, the GameCube classics, they're like, hey, you guys, you can only play GameCube games on the Switch 2. Even though the Switch 1 can run GameCube games, you can play GameCube and Wii games on the Switch 1 right now from the eShop, but they're not. You can't do this, though. F you. You can't do that. Also, it's been 8 months. How many games are available? 8? Wow. Is Mario Sunshine available? No. Mario Kart Double Dash? No. You can play Wind Waker. That's a great game. And Luigi's Mansion. Oh, and Wario World. That's great. I'm so happy about that. Oh my gosh. I bought this GameCube controller and I've had more use out of it playing with emulators on my computer. I feel like the biggest issue, if there's anything that I could, like, point to or just say to sum it all up, is I feel like Nintendo is losing their soul. Nintendo's losing their character, their plot armor, I guess. They've lost it a while ago, I take it back. That same Corby guy that I was mentioning before, he was doing a lot of streams, and I popped into one of his streams, or I was watching one of them, and somebody in the comments mentioned something about, like, Iwata, Satoru Iwata, and, like, the glory days of Nintendo's were, like, 10 years ago in 2016. That's not quite true. 2016 was a really slow year for Nintendo leading up to the Switch 2 and the Switch 1 in 2017. But before then, when Iwata was alive, and there was all these there's crazy games coming out for Nintendo, and then all these crazy ideas, and it wasn't working out for them all the time, and they were suffering financially. However, all their games were, like, so good. But now, we're doing that thing again where we're trying to say, look guys, we're going to do third-party games, but we're not getting the third-party games. So then what is there in place of that? A lot of mediocre first-party games that are not hitting, with some exceptions like Donkey Kong and Kirby. A lot of these other games, when I look at their lineup, it's like, this isn't what I want from Nintendo. This isn't what little kid me would have expected the future of Nintendo to look like. I've played Nintendo since the GameCube when I was a kid. Oh my gosh, dude. Again, Double Dash, one of the greatest games ever made. Luigi's Mansion, great times. I didn't have a PS3 or an Xbox. Nintendo was enough for me, and that's great. And now I'm watching Nintendo, and over the past several years, I've watched that version of Nintendo completely die and be replaced by something else that is just a corporation and has no other incentive other than money, is what it seems. Doug Bowser left Nintendo, and I can only speculate and think that after doing incredible PR work for Nintendo for Nintendo of America with the launch of the Switch 2, you look at some of his interviews and he handles them so gracefully. People are bringing up like all these questions and criticisms of the Switch 2, Joy-Con stick drift, OLED screen, all this stuff, and he dances around these questions and this opposition so beautifully to where you're like, this guy his talent is being wasted on the launch of this crappy system that's gonna sell anyways. Another kind of just nail in the coffin for me was when I saw that people took a Switch 1 model, like just a regular Switch, and they took the components from that and they put it into a console form factor. So instead of being in that slim little tablet handheld form factor, it was in a box. And they were able to hack into Breath of the Wild and get it to run at 60 frames per second on Switch 1 hardware. And the reason that happens is because, like, in a handheld form factor, all those components get super hot and it uses so much battery power, and they have to keep it cool so that the thing doesn't melt in your hand, it doesn't self-destruct, and it's also got to limit itself so that the battery doesn't go too fast because it's a handheld gaming thing and needs to be able to stay on for more than 30 seconds at a time. But then you take that same hardware and you put it into an environment where it can cool itself, it has more power to work with, it can do a lot more things. I wonder, like, if we took the same specs from the Switch 2 and just put that in a box to where it could overclock itself a little bit, what could we do with that? How many games could we get to run on this thing? They were said Borderlands 4 was going to be out on the Switch 2, and that obviously never happened, probably because they didn't optimize the game and it didn't run very well on Switch 2. But also, what the fetch? Why can't Nintendo offer like some other option to where you can get the best of both worlds? Because the Switch is not the best of both worlds. You don't get Nintendo and third party. You get some Nintendo for right now. I'm sure that Nintendo will make better games in the coming years. I'm sure that like their big console sellers are coming. You get Nintendo and you don't get third party with it, which is what they've been trying to do for the longest time, is to get third party on a Nintendo, and Nintendo keeps doing this thing over and over where they come up with some excuse for just like, it just won't work. Like, dude, the GameCube small discs, we just can't get third party games on here, man. We can't have Guitar Hero because the discs are too small. Dude, we cannot play games on the Wii because it's just not powerful enough. The Wii U, nobody wants to make games for it because the tablet controller and the Switch is not powerful enough. And now, like, with the Switch 2, it's like, it's just not powerful enough to get games to work on it. Although that's still not quite a fair criticism, because Resident Evil 9 is going to run at 60 frames per second on the thing, apparently. So that's incredible. And Pragmata really doesn't run that bad. It just doesn't run as well as I'd want it to, you know, for a $70 game. But it's still, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, why do we have this when we could have more if you would just also put out a box with your handheld like you used to? I just miss the old Nintendo. I miss Iwata. Yeah, I just had to get that all out there.